Everyone, and welcome to the Weeknight. I'm Sloan Sanders Townsend with Michael Steele and Luke Russert in for Alicia. Breaking tonight, Republicans are terrified. They're skipping town and bailing on votes as the backlash to Donald Trump's slush fund grows. Senator Ed Markey is calling for the president's impeachment over that fund and joins the table in a moment.
Then Democrats are launching an investigation into the president's prison-to-pardon pipeline for his allies and friends. Senator Peter Welch and Congressman Dave Min are here to discuss their new oversight initiative.
Also ahead, Stephen Colbert's last laugh. The late-night host is set to say goodbye tonight, and he's going out swinging, calling out the people and politics that essentially helped push him off the air. But folks, let's begin tonight with this breaking news. Mitch McConnell just joined the growing list of Republicans calling out the Trump Justice Department's, quote, slush fund. In a brand new statement, McConnell writes, quote, so the nation's top law enforcement official is asking for a slush fund to pay people who assault cops? Utterly stupid, morally wrong. Take your pick. McConnell's jabs come after the Senate GOP ditched a plan to start voting on a bill to fund Trump's immigration crackdown today. That plan fell apart when several Republicans appeared ready to back amendments pushed by Democrats to block the $1.8 billion fund. But instead of confronting Trump now, guess what? Senators are kicking that can down the road until they return to D.C. after Memorial Day recess next month. Also new today, Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick introduced a bipartisan bill to stop the Trump administration from using your tax dollars to fund the payout scheme. Here's just a snapshot of the mounting GOP blowback.
But I think it's stupid on stilts.
Why?
Because it will invariably put us in a position where your taxpayer dollars and my taxpayer dollars could potentially compensate someone who assaulted a police officer, admitted their guilt, got convicted, got pardoned, and now we're going to pay them for that? That's absurd. The American people are going to reject this out of hand.
This is a debate that needs to be had and will be had, Caitlin, on the floor of the House, and it will be voted on. This is not a unilateral executive decision. If you're dealing with appropriated money, that's got to come through us.
People are concerned about making their own ends meet, not about putting a slush fund together without a legal precedent. We are a nation of laws. We do better when we are a nation of laws.
You know what? You know, Senator Markey is coming in just a second, but the founders, his argument is that this fund is an impeachable offense. And I'm like, well, what did the founders say about all of this? Let me go look. So I checked the Federalist paper, and one of the famous lines out of the Federalist paper number 51 is, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. The founders definitely believed that unchecked power would be dangerous. They definitely believed that they could not just trust an executive to do the right thing. And they were definitely concerned about how money could influence what was going on in our government.
I said to you guys earlier today that I think outside of times when he's imposed direct suffering on people, this is the worst thing he's ever done in both administrations. And why is that? He's simultaneously managed to say that Congress no longer has the power of the purse. He is trying to give a payment to a paramilitary group that supported him and ransacked the Capitol and brought insurrection to these United States. Trying to get rid of judicial review here. Also, the corruption about giving no chance for the IRS to investigate anybody close to him or his family. So it's just a wham, bam, all over the place of awful. And I would say this is when you take into consideration the level that he's willing to go right now, where they're building a bunker, there are troops on the streets of Washington, D.C. You now have this fund to pay this paramilitary force that supports him. It makes me very afraid for the midterms.
We've been saying it. I'm just saying.
No, you're right. But here's the bottom line. I love Mitch McConnell came out today.
Yeah.
But I could not help but remember Mitch McConnell also stood there and called out Donald Trump on January 6th. And then puked up the impeachment. did not hold it down, did not stand with the American people.
Could have got rid of him then.
We wouldn't have to be dealing with stupid on stilts, to quote the senator. So I understand it. I get it. But here's where this, in my estimation, plays out. It's important to note that they're kicking this down the can. They could have dealt with it today. They could have sided with the Democrats and gotten behind the legislation to kill it, to just put this to bed, then go on break. No. They decided, let's kick it down the road. We'll be back in a month.
So you think they'll slide it in later?
They'll slide, baby boy, this is absolutely what's going to happen.
Okay, what can we do to give him what he wants?
Give him what he wants later.
We
we'll get past we'll deal with the noise. There won't be as much noise. They'll forget about it. We've seen this movie before, America. We've seen it before. Let's bring in Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey. As Simone mentioned, he's the first Senate Democrat to call for Trump's impeachment over the slush fund, calling the president, quote, latest impeachable offense.
Senator, the latest impeachable offense. I'm wondering what you think the first impeachable offense he did in this second term was, if you want to weigh in on that. But secondly, weigh in on the conversation we were just having. Do you believe your Republican colleagues are earnest and honest in the statements we're seeing from them today? Or do you believe, as we kind of do at this table, that they're going to come back in June and go along to get along in some way, shape, or form?
Look, it's an impeachable offense. What Richard Nixon was impeached for that he did in private, Donald Trump is now doing in public on steroids. This is a complete impeachable offense that was the very thing that our founding fathers were concerned about in ensuring that we had a president with checks and balances and not a king who could compromise our government. So this is exactly what the founding fathers, what the Constitution was meant to protect against. And Republicans right now realize that this is political kryptonite. This is something that is creating an outrage across the entire country, and whether it's Senator McConnell or Senator Cassidy or Senator Collins or Senator Tillis or Congressman Fitzpatrick, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the rebellion against this. So they might be able to call timeout on the field right now for 10 days before we come back. This is not going away. This is just going to build. It's a $1.8 billion slush fund. And again, remember, it also includes a provision which precludes any further cases being brought against Trump, his children, or his allies for tax violations. So this is an impeachable offense. It is corruption. It is the high crime and misdemeanor that, in fact, the Constitution anticipated, and we are not going to allow them to escape. The Democrats are going to insist we have votes on the House and Senate floor.
Senator Markey, one of the scary things about this slush fund is how it's being constructed to really take care of those who did the worst of the worst, those who invaded the Capitol in the name of Donald Trump to try and overturn a free and fair election. A January 6th prosecutor spoke to our own Laura Barron Lopez in an article she put on our website, quote, January 6th prosecutors and officers see Trump's $776 billion fund as a signal. The former prosecutor said the prospects and members of Oath Keepers and Proud Boys receiving substantial payouts alarmed him. Quote, think about how much weaponry they could purchase with that. Think about how much money that they could use to recruit other people and recruit them with the message of, look, if you commit crimes in the name of Trump, you're going to be pardoned. You're going to be enriched. How fearful are you, Senator Markey, that this is a payment to a paramilitary group which Donald Trump could rise up at a moment's notice and say, look at Minnesota, you're not going to be accountable for anything if you kill someone in the street. And by the way, here's money for you at the end of the day.
And thank you, Luke, because this is basically signaling to Oath Keepers, to Proud Boys, to those who were down in Charlottesville. They were good people on both sides, says the president. It's not only a payoff to them for past actions, it's almost an invitation for them to commit future actions as well, because the president will protect them. The president will pay them off. The president will ensure that they are given immunity. So this is creating the conditions in which the worst in our society being empowered by the president to endanger our Constitution, to act with impunity, and to have no guardrails, no protections whatsoever. And it starts with the Proud Boys, it starts with the Oath Keepers, but it extends so much further beyond that, because that is what Trump's base really wants. They want to be protecting these people who are basically acting unconstitutionally, and Trump is trying to create the conditions where they will be protected. In fact, it's so bad, the judge in this case was thinking of dismissing the case because she believed that it just reeked of collusion. And the IRS had big problems with it. The Department of Treasury official quit when this fund was announced. So the president wants to wall out the judiciary and the Congress. I believe that the judiciary has to use their sua sponte powers to come back and relook at this case, and the Congress must act. We need hearings. The Republicans are going to try to run, but they're not going to be able to hide. We're going to make them accountable.
Senator, I can't begin to express to you how vexed I am by this particular action by this administration and how much it really ticks me off, because it goes to the heart of everything both Simone and Luke and yourself has said. But, sir, I have lived through 10 years, as have you and America, of Donald Trump and his BS, and the response of Republicans and their BS to Donald Trump. And the fact that I firmly believe that at the end of the day, what will play out here, despite your calls for impeachment, despite whatever machinations and vexing and you know, sort of, you know, grappling with this that we see coming off of Capitol Hill, that this can gets kicked down the road. We're back here in the middle of June when Congress is returned, and we are a month or 3 weeks behind this storyline. And Republicans give him what he wants because they control the House despite what Democrats may do there, and they control the Senate despite what Democrats may do there. So how does this call for impeachment resonate seriously when you know that there's nothing you can do now? Maybe later if you get the House and the Senate. And Donald Trump actually today spoke to that. I'd like to play just what he had to say about control of the Senate and impeachment.
Are you losing control of the Senate, sir? Are you losing control of the Senate, Senate Republicans?
I don't know. I really don't know. I can tell you, I only do what's right.
Do you think if Democrats were to take control of Congress again, they would immediately begin the impeachment process?
I think if Democrats took control of the Congress, I think that, and let's say took control of the country, I think that this country's finished.
So that didn't answer the question directly, but he's equating any efforts of impeaching him to ending the country. How do you narratively convince the American people that would then bring the pressure on members of the Senate and the House to impeach?
This is an impeachable offense. What Congressman Fitzpatrick, a Republican, is saying is that, like the Epstein vote on the floor of the House of Representatives, they're going to bring it out, and they're going to win, too. Fitzpatrick will win on that vote on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. And we're going to find a mechanism in this budget that we're going to be considering as soon as we come back, where we're going to force all the Republicans to vote on this $1.8 billion slush fund as well. And we're going to have the votes on that as well. We can already see 4, 5 of the Republicans. We only need 60 total. And I just think that everyone understands that there's a bill that is coming due for all of this activity that Trump is engaged in, and the bill is going to be paid by Republican House and Senate members on the ballot this year. They're going to be the ones who pay the price, and increasingly they're going to revolt because their own political futures are tied to it. So far, I agree with you, Michael. It's been invasion of the body snatchers. You look at them, they look like the same people, and they've been petrified to move. But I think going forward, you can actually see that many of these members right now are just echoing Chris Christopherson, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And whether you're Tillis or Cassidy or McConnell or others, they all realize right now they've got to break free, and they're going to be the leaders that are going to open up the pathway for other Republicans, unless they want to lose in a landslide this fall.
Well, maybe because beef is up 16%, okay? The people are paying attention. Senator Ed Markey, thank you so much for kicking us off tonight. Stay with us, folks, because we are going to continue this conversation about corruption with two Democrats who just launched an oversight effort to examine pardons that look like blatant abuses of power by the president. Senator Peter Welch and Congressman Dave Min will join us. And later, there's a lot of hand-wringing and confusion, frankly, over today's release of a DNC report on the 2024 election. You know, Donald Trump has always claimed to be tough on crime. Listen to this moment on Morning Joe back in 2015.
You were a tough on crime guy. You have been a tough on crime guy, notably in the 80s and 90s. Have you had an evolution like a lot of the country has on this? Have you rethought some of your positions on this at all? No?
I'm tough on crime.
Okay. What about sentencing and
I mean, I'm a believer in
zero tolerance
crime. I really am. I'm tough on crime, and we have to stop crime.
Michael Steele was on that panel. I'm sure he had thoughts.
I did.
You know, it turns out that Trump only cares about crime when it is not committed by a friend or an ally. If it is, he seems to think those individuals should be rewarded. The New York Times describes it as the prison to pardons to payouts pipeline. And the Trump Justice Department's new slush fund already has elated January 6 rioters. Well, they're musing. Quote, this is what they're saying. On how they might spend a government payout. Among the ideas being kicked around, writes the New York Times, is new cars, new houses, paying to get their names off Google, and underwriting political campaigns. Joining us now at the table is Democratic Senator Peter Welch of Vermont and Democratic Congressman Dave Min of California. This month, they announced a major oversight effort into several pardons and commutations issued by Donald Trump that raised concerns over corruption and abuse of power. I almost choked on the issue because I'm like, what is going on here?
Well, we got Vermont and Connecticut at the table. Senator, I want to start with you because I want to sort of piggyback off of our first segment with Senator Markey and his effort to call for impeachment because of this slush fund and what it portends and what it really means and how it undermines the foundations of the Constitution. Simone gave us a quick lesson on where the founders were on this. What do you see here as the off-ramp for Republicans? You talked to them. Mitch McConnell came out today, very strong statement, right? But as I noted as we began the show, Mitch McConnell gave a very strong statement on January 6th, too, but then did the backstroke as fast as he could off of impeachment, right?
Right.
This is going to play out the exact same way, I think, on this. How do you see it?
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Convince me, sir.
Well, what you saw today, where the Republicans were unable to even get a vote, was that they declined the invitation by President Trump for them to commit political suicide. And that's essentially what it was, because he wanted them to vote on the ballroom. He wanted them to validate the $1.8 billion slush fund. And, of course, that's in the backdrop on the heels of what David and I have been focusing on, and that is the pay-for-play pardon issuance, where you pay a lot of money, you make a big contribution, you get a pardon. And that is a staggering lineup of corruption for folks to get behind. And I think the ballroom and the slush fund are very visible and very visceral for everyday people. So you're seeing a lot of Republicans push back, and they resisted even taking up a vote on continuing on the appropriations bill.
Congressman Mim, I mean, the scale of the corruption here, as it pertains to these groups that are racist, that engage in insurrectionist activities, specifically the leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, who says he wants a piece of this $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, saying, quote, in a phone interview with the New Times on Wednesday morning, longtime Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio said that while he hasn't taken any concrete steps yet, he will definitely seek compensation from the money pop, which he described as another promise made, another promise kept by Trump. When you hear something like that, somebody who is sentenced to jail for 22 years by a jury of his peers, who got let out by Donald Trump in the January 6th pardoning, do you feel the public sees the level of corruption here? That someone who had gone to jail for 22 years, was supposed to go to jail for 22 years for insurrection against the United States,
is now going to request millions from this fund?
No, it's so horrible. And I was someone who has spent my career fighting for the rule of law. I actually turned down Wall Street to go to the SEC to prosecute corporate fraud to start my career. I was a law professor at UC Irvine in my district before coming into Congress. And the level of corruption is just so outrageous right now. And I just want to point something out here. These January 6th insurrectionists, a lot of them had previous criminal records. A lot of them were guilty of violent crimes before. And a lot of them, since being released by Donald Trump, have gone on to commit additional crimes, including child pornography, child sexual assault, rape, assault. These are not good people. And there are people right now who have gone and done the worst things after being pardoned by Donald Trump, who are now set to receive millions of payments, $1 billion in payments. And that's just wrong. And that's one of the reasons that Senator Welch and I decided that we needed to go after this pardon power. One thing we're considering doing is talking about doing an op-ed around the pardon power, because it really hasn't been researched enough. But in the context of this settlement, this outrageous settlement, I just want to note something. I taught contracts law at UC Irvine. A settlement is a type of contract. And you can't have a contract when you don't actually have two parties. And that was something the judge was pointing out. This is not a real contract. It is an executive order issued by the DOJ. I believe it has no force of law. What they're doing right now is stealing $1.8 billion from something called the Judgment Fund at the Department of Justice. It's meant to settle actual litigation where the government owes money, maybe to settle where there's a real case. This doesn't qualify for any of that. What this is doing right now is giving money as a policy decision to people who did very bad things. Now, if Donald Trump wants to make the case that we should be giving $1.8 billion out to the Proud Boys and J6 insurrectionists, he can make that case to Congress. But we are the ones who have the power of the purse. He is right now violating the law, just as he's done every single day in this administration. And there have to be consequences. We have to rein in that pardon power, among other things.
You know, I was thinking long and hard about this because I remember when the elections happened in Hungary and everybody was like, see, look, corruption. The people don't like corruption. This is maybe a foretelling of what could happen here in America if we just pay attention. And I agree. I don't think people like corruption, but I do think that a lot of folks in America are willing to look the other way if they feel as though they are getting something out of it. But right now, the American people, I mean, beef is up 16%, diesel is up 67%. These 1/3 of school districts in this country are cutting budgets, literally, so that they can keep the school buses running, cutting library budgets, all these things, because of what the government has done. But then you see folks like Mark Cuban standing behind the president the other day because, he did this really good thing on I agree with him on drug prices. And so how do you make the case that what the president is doing is not only an affront to our democracy, but illegal and, frankly, cheating the American people, and that this is a 5-alarm fire when you got folks that, are essentially in the coalition being like, well, maybe he's bad on that, but he's okay on this. I'm not going to take no questions about that other thing.
You mentioned Orban, and it was a combination of corruption and decline in their standard of living. In other words, there was a real willingness on the part of people to be, if they were upbeat economically, there would be a fight between the two parties. This is compared, him getting the $1.8 billion that he wants and selling pardons is combined with a budget that we were about to vote on that did nothing about health care costs, did nothing about electricity costs, did nothing about food costs, did nothing about gasoline. It was literally just a finger in the eye of folks who are struggling to pay their bills. And then you add to it what he fought for in this budget and was demanding of the Republican senators was the $1 billion for the ballroom and the $1.8 billion for a slush fund. So you combine those two things, and what's in it for anyone? And, at the end of the day, people really are repulsed at this because Americans are willing to work hard. They don't mind hard work. But at the end of the month, they want to be a half a step ahead, not 2 steps behind, because we've got a government that's spending $1 billion on a ballroom and 1.8 on paying off criminals.
Congressman, I want to dance with you a little bit as a...
What kind of dance?
Legal to legal. Two lawyers.
Salsa to tango.
Yeah, because whether I'm in a Giant or at a Target or in my neighborhood, I get a lot of people stopping to ask questions, and this issue, to your point, Senator, does resonate with a lot of people. They're just trying to understand the one fundamental question. how can he do this?
Yeah.
How can he do this?
Yeah.
How is it possible that he could actually get away with doing this?
Yeah.
Could you help folks kind of understand, because you touched on it, about this is not a legal contract situation. There's no meeting of the minds between the United States government and someone who has a claim, et cetera. Could you break that down, folks? Because folks really want to understand, how the hell does he get away with this?
Well, I think lawyers around the country right now are asking the same question: how can he get away with this? And the answer is pretty simple. And keep in mind, I'm a freshman. I've been serving 16 months in Congress, the longest 16 months of my life. I didn't have this many gray hairs before I started. But, you know, what I've observed is that House Republicans are all single-issue voters, and that issue is whether they're on Team Trump or not. And when you have a Congress that's this feckless, the majority is this feckless, and completely decides that they want to look the other way under the leadership, quote unquote, of what I call meeker Mike Johnson, because he's not a speaker, he's a meeker, and he's out there turning a blind eye to all this. And we are Congress. We are supposed to assert our authority, and they are not doing that. And so right now we're very frustrated in the minority. When we take back the majority, and I believe we will take it back in decisive way later this year, we have to let people know right now that there will be consequences, and that's why it's so important that we do things like this pardons letter that Senator Welch and I did. That it's so important that we lay the marker on what we're going to do on oversight, so that people are reminded that, hey, Donald Trump might not be president forever, and there may very well be consequences. And I just want to point out that this pardons issue is even more offensive than people are realizing, because there are billions of dollars in quote-unquote restitution that these white-collar criminals, like the founder of Binance, who was convicted of securities fraud, he was supposed to pay something like $600 million to the victims of his fraud. And that money just got taken back by Donald Trump when he pardoned these people. He pardoned dozens and dozens of people, billions of dollars. Now, so not only are these people out of jail, but the billions of dollars that they owed to victims of these frauds are now wiped out.
And not even to mention, as we unfortunately have to say goodbye
up.
to you. Well, not only does the debt go up, but not only is he willing to do that, but no mention of the Epstein victims who have not seen any type of acknowledgement, let alone
It's funny that the
reparations.
people he goes after on the Republican side are all the same people who voted to release the Epstein files. Makes you think, right?
It does make you think. Senator Peter Welch and Congressman Dave Menn, thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
After the break, we're doing the, going to discuss some reporting. We're going to do the do. Exclusive to MS Now and the Democratic National Committee. That's what I like. We're going to do the do with the DNC. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty joins us on the weeknight. I don't know what the hell
Send Michael some Mountain Dew.
Please, please.
I'll have the crab
Goodness.
juice.
Committee Chair Ken Martin released and disavowed a long-awaited internal autopsy of the 2024 campaign. Let's be clear about what the incomplete report is and is not. It's not about a single candidate or a single race. It was intended for the DNC to evaluate how to improve its role as a fundraising and platform building apparatus. One big conclusion, quote, millions of Americans are suffering from poor access to health care, manufacturing, and job losses, and a failing infrastructure, yet continue to be persuaded to vote against their best interests because they do not see themselves reflected in the America of the Democratic Party. Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Joyce Beatty of Ohio. She's an associate chair of the Democratic National Committee. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Excited to be here.
There was lots of chit chat about this report today, about what it said, about what it didn't say. I talked to a number of folks today. I talked to a lot of state party chairs who said that, separate from the report, they are pleased with the money that they are getting from the Democratic National Committee because they are getting record numbers of cash every single month. And then I talked to some DNC members who were on this call that Chairman, it's our understanding, Chairman Martin held with members of the DNC. And during my conversations, the members, they raised questions about the finality of the report that was released and whether a more final version of it exists. And then folks also asked why. Why today? Why not Sunday? Why not 4th of July weekend?
Why not 6 months
Why not 6 months ago? So can you answer the question? One, is this the actual final report, or are you aware of any other versions? And then two, why today?
To my understanding, there is not another version. This is the final version. And to the first part of your question, Simone, he didn't release it before because, as you've seen, if anybody has looked at it or read it, it's incomplete. It's not totally accurate, but it's what we had. I don't think there was anything magical about today versus tomorrow or next week, but I think that Ken was very strategic in deciding to go ahead and do it now. We had Vice President Harris saying release the report. We have 50% of the people who said release it, 50% of the people could care less, because people aren't calling me about an after action or